Okay, good evening. This is Pam Gallagher, and today is September 20th, 2020. And we're recording. As long as we have a red dot, we're recording. So we're going to talk tonight about the changing times and what's happening. And thank you all for joining me on a Sunday night. It's beautiful weather here in Cincinnati. It was 72, 74 today, and sunny and just low humidity. It was lovely. So I hope everybody had a nice day and were able to get out. Everybody could stand a little fresh air, I think. These are today's transits. We're going to talk about several things between now and Christmas and the New Year, and what the energy says, It isn't black and white, for sure, but the transits of the moment, obviously the sun is in Virgo and the moon today is in Scorpio, and we just had a new moon a couple of days ago. And it was at like 25 of Virgo. So all you Virgos had some new energy coming in. We get a new moon in Virgo every year in the fall, so that's not new. We just don't know what degree. So, excuse me, my throat's going froggy. So what? The first thing we'll talk about, we'll get to, but today is Sunday, and Tuesday morning, the sun will move out of Virgo into Libra. Now that's called the Fall Equinox. In the Northern Hemisphere, well, in both the Northern and Southern Hemisphere, it's equal day and night. Obviously, we're getting, in the North, the days are going to get shorter, and in the Southern Hemisphere, they'll start to get longer now. But nonetheless, the sun is sitting, its declination is at 0 right on the equator. So you get the equal day and night. The equinoxes, the spring and the fall, mark times of balance. They mark times of stabilizing energy. The winter solstice and the summer solstice are the longest and shortest days of the year. That has a different tempo. But Tuesday, we're coming into the fall equinox, and that's 0 Libra. So many people, what we call mundane astrologers, and people that study astrology over a long period of time, always look at the equinoxes and the 4, with the 2 solstices and the 2 equinoxes, and say that they give you a prediction of the energy for the quarter. So if you take that into consideration, the moon could be anywhere, and the moon's in Sagittarius. So a very open and direct energy. The big COVID group that we've been talking about, the Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn conjunction, this has been going on since, well, let's go back for a minute. Let's wonder where I put it. There it is. I started to say I had already brought it up earlier. If you recall, and any of you that have watched some of the other podcasts that we've done to talk about this year, and I really did it because some of you had requested that I just talk about, changing times and what's happening and what it means to us. And so we looked at this in the spring. And I told you that, now you see all these marks. They are when the outer planets make a major conjunction and together. Let's go back. I'm going to go up here and hit the time. Here is 2019, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. We're in 2020. You don't see any of those red lines. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, sorry. Here's 2020. Let's go forward 5 years. 21. Now in 22, we will have a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. 23, 24, Jupiter-Uranus. Those, but what should stand out for you this year is that this is an exceptional year of transition, of major planets aligning. And planets are energy. Planets are these intersecting coordinates. And so some of you on here have studied astrology and some of you haven't. And that's fine. But for you to, that's what we're talking. We're talking about planetary energy. We're talking about the times and what is all this about in the grander scheme of things. And so back in January, Saturn's a planet of control, structure, rules, and Pluto being power and intensity. And Saturn and Pluto came together. In astrology, we call that a conjunction. And that was in January. Well, this is when the whole COVID thing, that was the week that COVID, was put in the news. It had been going on, but obviously it was mid-January when it hit the major news. And then up came the Jupiter-Pluto at the end of March. And this is when the whole country shut down. End of March, mid of March, end of March. And then June, July, we had a resurgence. And the third Jupiter-Pluto conjunction will be mid-November. And so I had said, those of you that have listened, we will see what transpires. What do we observe? And knowing that these are major transition times. And so we do know that this stopped the clock. Everybody went into hibernation. June, we had another peak. So what happens in November? Do we have one more? Do we have one more big surge of COVID? Or does it, skip on out the door and be done with us? I don't know. We may have one more fall pop. But then if you go into next year, nothing. So I think if we can get through November, December, and everybody will, be respectful of the procedures, to me, we will have hit our last peak in November. One other thing that's occurring that you can see on here, this is the planet Jupiter and the planet Saturn. Jupiter and Saturn, if you've watched any of the mystical movies or New Age type movies, they're calling, I was looking to see if the notes were in there, anything I needed to see. Jupiter, Saturn, it's called the Great Conjunction. And it's been in the movies and they talk about it, but it's when Jupiter has a 12-year orbit and Saturn has a 29-year orbit. They're the last two visible planets in our solar system. So Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are there, but you need a telescope to see them. So with the naked eye, Jupiter and Saturn are what they call the outer visible planets. And they have to do with society and social interaction and social tradition. So Jupiter and Saturn will come and make their 20-year conjunction in December, on December 21st, which is the winter solstice. Kind of like we're going to have the fall equinox and then the winter solstice, but they're these quarter turning points for us. It's when the sun hits the major conjunctions. But so Jupiter and Saturn, hey Marianne, Jupiter and Saturn will conjunct in December on the 21st. And that marks a whole new 20-year cycle, a new social order. So we have one last surge in November, and then we get this new social order. And we're like, okay, what does that mean? Well, that's a really good question. But here we go. This is Jupiter, and here's Saturn. Pluto's sitting smack dab in the middle of them. These three together in the last degrees of Capricorn have not all come together since 1218. And back in January through March, when it all got tight and everything blew up, with, it looked very much like the 1218, which was when we had the bubonic plague, quite frankly. That was when it hit the earth, or hit all the countries. So to get your broader scheme of what's the point? What's the point? And we can all hibernate and we can all be frightened, but I don't think it's around being frightened. I think it's around closure. It's around personal decisions. So when we get to this timeline and Jupiter pulls past Saturn in December, and they move there, if that conjunction will happen not in Capricorn, but at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So many astrologers are feeling that this is the forerunner of the new age. And everybody says, are we in the new age? When will we be in the new age? Well, it's a good question. But we are in the pre-dawn days of the new age. There's no doubt about that. Actually, in 2340 or something like that is when, by sidereal, when the axis actually moves to 0 Aquarius and moves out of Pisces. But we're right there at that 29th degree. We're moving into 0, actually back from 1 back to 0 is what we're really doing. 0 Pisces back to Aquarius. So we'll be moving into the Aquarian age, but we've got about a 200 to 300 year shift here. However, because Jupiter Saturn will make the conjunction in December, I didn't bring up the winter solstice, but I can show you the Jupiter Saturn conjunction. Those of you that have studied astrology will appreciate it, and the rest of you will be like, I don't know what she's talking about. That's okay too. But sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. And what I want you to understand is that this Jupiter-Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius is the heralding of a new time. And Capricorn is an earth sign. And we've had a lot of action in Capricorn, a lot of closure in Capricorn. Earth is grounded, solid, slow-moving, has roots. That's very touchable. It's very material. It's very earthy. And Aquarius is an air sign, and it's much more about technology and the mind and communication. So if you will observe what's happened in our communication just in the last 5 years, phones and internet, and who would have dreamed that as this whole grouping came in, that it would be the internet that saved us, because everybody's working virtually and everybody's communicating wirelessly most of the time. And so we're moving into this new age of technology. So obviously we're going to have to let go of some of our earthly grounded, practical, plodding ways, because we're moving into Aquarius. One of my students brought to me, and I read it. She had talked to me, and we shared it. Dolores Cannon is a hypnotherapist. She's passed now, but she had done, I guess, hypnotherapy on hundreds of people. And her last book on volunteers in the New Earth were a whole group of people that said that they had advanced souls who have incarnated here during this period of time to help the planet transition to this higher level of vibration. So perhaps, let's think about that for a minute. Perhaps we are being attuned to a higher vibration. Now, the lower vibration, Saturn is control, and Saturn also is fear, because it's very grounded, it's black and white. Anything you can't see, hear, touch, or smell is considered to be scary. So Saturn is very grounded and very much in control. Pluto is intense. It rules Scorpio. It rules power. It rules. But one of the words I like for Pluto is that it calls for shift. So Pluto and Saturn have all been started in January when they came together. And it was a heavy time for us last January. But all of these are getting ready to move into Aquarius. So what do I think really is happening? I think we've come through the darkest night, but we must use the Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter positively. And I believe that as souls, we each have a choice. And I also believe anybody that's on this podcast listening to it has got to have some understanding that there is a greater universe and a greater power, and that we have a responsibility to try to, step up to it. I'm not saying don't be cautious and don't be sensible and don't, let's honor what is. I mean, really, most of you know that I was in the hospital this summer. It went out half the world. So, and by the way, thank you for all your prayers. And the second oblation seemed to have worked. I'm back in rhythm, and I'm getting very good, reports. So yay, thanks. A lot of people joined in with prayer that day, and I'm very grateful. I really wanted that ablation to work. I really did. So, but yeah, they're pretty amazed, actually. They're all saying, what happened? What did you do? And I said, it wasn't me, it was prayer. And they're like, whoa. One doctor said to me, do you believe in miracles? I said, I do. How about you? He said, I think we're looking at one. So I'm very grateful. I'm still being very sensible. I'm still being reasonable. I'm still trying to, I got the point. The universe said, slow it down a little bit. And so I'm trying to use better judgment. But yeah, isn't that great? So yeah, because it was the second time around. The first one didn't budge much, but the second one seemed to have done the job. So I'm very grateful. I want to embrace Jupiter, Saturn as a new time, an Aquarian time, embrace the new technology, embrace new thinking. Pluto is the planet of power. And so we don't want to use, Mindy says we're moving, working at moving, keeping her slowed down. I like to work and I like what I do. However, I realize there has to be sensibility in everything. But I'm not looking for a way to stop working. So let me tell you, I like what I do and I have no complaints. But I am trying to honor the Jupiter Saturn, and I want you guys to honor the Jupiter Saturn in Aquarius. I want you to raise your thinking. I want you to start thinking in more Aquarian, progressive, break loose, think of new ways to do things. Let's step into this new time. I believe that any of us that are here chose to be here at this time to be a part of the transition. And so we do have to honor our physical bodies for sure, but we also have to honor, of course, it sounds corny, but loving one another or being kind to one another, forgiving, going into a higher Aquarian mental, detached, practical state of it is what it is. Everybody's doing the best they can with what they've got. And so I ask you, as we, the best news is your health. Well, it is. It's wonderful. I will share with you one more thing. I had worn a CPAP machine for 10 years, and usually once you have sleep apnea, that you're condemned for it forever. But my machine quit right before the surgery, and so to get a new one, I had to go and do the sleep study last week. And I went it goes from 0 to 100, and I used to be at 77, which is extreme sleep apnea. And last week, they ran the test. You stay all night. They glue your head, your body. You do EKGs. You are wired for sound. And when I woke up, they had not put the mask on me, and they said because I was running at 2.6. And I'd been at 77 out of 100. Do the math. They looked at me and said, do you believe in, we don't understand. We have never seen anything like this. And I said, well, that's the power of prayer. And they're like, looks like a miracle to us. Even the doctor said, in my 40 years of practice, I've never seen this. I said, well, there are a lot of people in that room. So thanks. So I share that because I do believe in the power of prayer, and I do believe in the power of positive thinking. And I do believe that there's power in numbers. And so instead of running with fear that, something horrible is going to happen, let's be safe. I'm not saying don't be safe, but try not to be in fear, and try not. What I have noticed, and I'm not saying anybody here is doing it, but Pluto is power. And sometimes there's power and control. And so I won't do this, and I won't do that, and I can't do this, and I can't do that. If it's coming from a position of power, that's not good. So I want us to be very conscious and cautious about how we use our power. So, because we all have power. And I don't know that we want to accept that, or that we're really conscious of how much power we have as souls. And I believe that we're all here. So I'm going to go through a lot of numbers and show you some things that are coming up. But I just wanted to say, as we move toward December 21st, and we move toward Jupiter and Saturn coming into zero Aquarius. Now, they will conjunct again in 20 years, but for the next 220 years, they will be in the air element. They will, for the last 220 years, they've been in the earth element. And so the whole social purpose was to be grounded and to be in the earth and to be in tradition and to build structure. And we're moving now into higher technology, higher thinking, communication. It's not going to be as earthy. It's not going to be as earthy. So we want to be part of the growth. Yes, Catherine says self-love. Self-love is a huge. But in this book that I was reading at the time to keep me quiet after the oblation, so I would stay still, I was reading it because that'll do it. That gives, anchors me. And I was reading about how the planet, the energy is being raised for the whole planet, and that people are having reactions to this. So I believe that we're here to be a part of this. I truly do. And so I'm calling each one of you to say, as Jupiter, Saturn come, arrive, we're coming into a time of change. We're coming into a new light. We're coming into a 220-year pattern of air. That's a big deal. There's nobody going to be around by the time we get through that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in air signs. So let us, while we're here, and I believe that we chose to be here at this transition time, as we move. Interesting, isn't it, that we're going into Aquarius, and there the Jupiter-Saturn are at the 0 degree or 1st degree of Aquarius. So we are not in the age of Aquarius, but we're in the dawning, in the pre-dawning days of Aquarius. So there you go with that. And like I said, I do believe that this whole timeline that's occurring has indicated to us that we're just about on the backside of this. Now, we just have to do our part. So let's talk about, here was the new moon a couple of days ago. Let's just do a little astrology. It was at 25 Virgo. Now, any of you that have studied it all, the nodal axis is our spiritual axis, and it's where the moon and sun's orbits intersect. And this new moon squared it. Now, what does that mean? It means that at a soul level, we're at a crossroads. How are we going to respond? And so, certainly with caution, but with faith, with positive. We're on the backside of this. I mean, by spring we're going to have we're going to have spring. We're going to have people out walking, and so try to avoid the fear. It'll eat you, and it's not healthy. But this new moon squared the node, saying we're at a crossroads here. Can we do this? Can we? And Virgo, of course, is a sign of take care of your health. So that was, and then today I showed you that. But the next one I want to talk about is, and Duffy's on here, and she sent me this. She's hot on the internet, thank you God, because there's a lot I don't do or look at, and she sent this. We have the next full moon will be, we have one full moon on October 1. Maybe I should do that first. The next full moon is when the moon's opposite the sun, and it will be at 9 Aries Libra. And so the Aries Libra people will be feeling it. Full moons are completing energy. However, the one on October 31st is Halloween. And there's a whole mystical thing about Halloween and the witches and the Day of the Dead and the whole thing. But obviously it is a time, because it's right in the transition when the days get shorter and the nights get longer and the weather changes. And so there's a lot of history with Halloween. It's kind of a fun holiday, as we've made it in this country. But on this Halloween, and we don't always, people may think that it's always a full moon on Halloween, but it's not. But there will be a full moon on Halloween. Now it's going to be at almost 11 a.m. in the morning on the East Coast. And it's at 8 Taurus Scorpio. It's a full moon. But this particular full moon and where it's at will be visible all around the world. There's only a very small part of the world on the other side of the world that will not be able to see the full moon. It's because of the degrees above the horizon where it's sitting in declination. So the last time that we had a full moon that was this visible and had this kind of impact was in 1944. Now think about that. What happened in 1944? I was born, but other than that, the full moon, it was the war, and it was ending. And that was one of the most tremendous times of our, in modern times on our planet. And that full moon culminated, and it was seen all over the world, and it was a mark that we were coming to the end of a whole process. Well, I'm taking this full moon being the first one to be visible all over the world. So Elizabeth is saying to me, what about this? We have the sun's in Taurus, the moon, and then there sits Uranus. She's like, what about Uranus with the moon? The planet Uranus has changed. It rules Aquarius. It rules destiny. So it's visible all over the world. It's an indicator of change. It's an indicator of completion. And Uranus is there, which rules Aquarius, and it rules change. So it's like we're breaking loose. We're going to have new things. So let us put our energy and our prayers and our thought toward breaking this old pattern, this old war that we've been in, and moving into a new place. So I'm hoping that between the end of October and we get to December, and the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on the winter solstice, December 21st, that we see a new Jupiter-Saturn social order and things begin to change. So I'm hoping Uranus is technology, and it's cutting edge technology. So they may very well come up with a virus or a protection, a vaccine that would counter this. Is it time? Has Saturn and Pluto done their job? Have they made us slow down? Have they made us look at our lives and say what's most important and what's not, and how do I be quiet? And how do I be in my own space? And if you look around, that's what this is really about. It's about, I mean, who would have believed that anything could stop the crazy fast pace that we were all running on? And it just, I mean, I wouldn't have dreamed that anything would do it. I was totally amazed. But here's the full moon, and I think this is marking the time where we're going to start to see. So in November, I expect us to start to see some new technology and new breakthroughs that are going to be very positive. So I'm excited about this full moon, and I'm excited about, they don't happen that often. So we're always looking. The impact of the full moon, yes, on transiting Uranus, that's what we were talking about, Ben, is that Uranus is there, and Uranus is in Taurus. But Uranus is, now I will tell you that Uranus is it's a planet of change, and Taurus is a very, very stable sign. So Uranus will be in this sign a total of about 4 years, but it creates instability because Uranus wants to break loose and make change, and Taurus is the bull, and he wants consistency and stability. So it's forcing change. We want to be part of the embracing of the change, not somebody that has to be pushed. So when you hear things, when you feel yourself resisting, you think, let me be open, let me listen through this, let me not, let us not, because the power of prayer and the power of thought are very powerful. And so we can be part of the solution, not the problem. And so there aren't that many of us, but I can tell you that each one of us has a small circle that we can impact. And if each one of us tries to be positive and tries to move forward, and so the reasons I'm pushing it is because we have some astrological data to back up the fact that it's reasonable to think that something positive is going to happen. We'll move to the Jupiter-Saturn, and then I'll come back and talk about the election and what's going on. I mean, I don't have any idea, quite frankly, what the end result's going to be, but I can show you the energy. So here's the Jupiter-Saturn, and we'll close this section with Jupiter-Saturn and in Aquarius, and it's in December. So between the end of October and December, I expect Uranus to bring some breakthroughs and some positive things. And I just want us to be a part of the positive energy of our prayers and our hoping that this is going to be a positive thing. And I truly believe that what happened with my heart and the ablations and the procedures was, for me, an affirmation of just how strong the power of prayer and the power of group thought is. Because quite frankly, without that, I don't know that I'd have been teaching this fall. I don't know that I could have. And now I'm fine, and I'm doing my 4 nights a week and happy to do it, quite frankly. Thrilled to do it. So, but that is the power of thought. And so I'm sitting there looking at it in real time going, this is not just, we tend to get shut down. We tend to get numb, and we're like, yeah, I've heard all this. And I'm like, no, don't go there. Let's embrace this as a very positive thought. Now, obviously, we have eclipses every 6 months, so that's not a big deal. And we will have them in December. So, but the nodes have moved, and the nodes are what? When a new moon or a full moon lines up with the nodal axis, that's when we get an eclipse, because we get a shadow. That's what the word eclipse means. So they're in Gemini Sagittarius now. So the Gemini Sagittarius people are the ones whose lives, Mindy's typing, she said, the power of understanding that we're not alone. Others are feeling some of the same things, and how important the sense of community is to reach out and touch people that are struggling. And I can tell you, it's been a crazy month. Some people were not as fortunate as I was, or maybe they are, but they've passed on in rather unusual, unexpected ways. But the energy is increasing. And so if you will sit with it, if you will attune to it, You can be part of it. You can ride the wave. Don't fight it. So we're moving into this new energy. I'm telling you, when we get to the first of the year, it's not going to be overnight, but you're going to start to see it ease off, slow down. So like I said, each time you hear somebody really frightened, try to say to them, we're okay. Just ask for help and stay calm, and the more we fight, the more resistance, the more aggravation we get. We're trying to ride these waves. We're almost through the forest. Let's not blow it. So enough of that. But I've made my point, and I hope I've shown you energetically that things are really coming forward that would justify that kind of thinking. It's not just like, oh, Pollyanna, okay, you're telling me it's better. I'm like, no, we got some patterns that we haven't seen in a really long time that are coming in. Yay. I'm always like, show me the energy. So another thing before we get off of here, what about the election? All right, here's election day now. On November 3rd, 12:01 a.m. in Washington, D.C., nationally, the polls are open for the United States. And so there is a lot of charts. And I just listened to a weekend webinar, and some of the world astrologers were all chatting about what they thought, and who they thought would win. And usually when they do their panel, they're all wrong. So I listen because I like to see what methods they're using to come to their decisions, but it usually doesn't mean anything. So I wasn't paying too much attention, except I will tell you that I think there were like 6 of them, and they all came to the agreement that this was like half and half. It was going to end up being, like the split. So who knows? What I'm going to tell you, though, is when we start that morning, Mercury's retrograde. Now, everybody knows, most of you that are on here have heard that Mercury's a planet of communication, of speaking, of teaching, of thinking. And Mercury will have been retrograde for 3 weeks. And so on the morning of the election, Mercury is still retrograde. By that night, when the election is over, and so in Honolulu at 7 p.m. is when their polls close. So that's when we can say, and it was interesting in this webinar that I listened to, some people started with the election, the opening of the election. Other people used the closing hour of the election to decide and base some of their projections of what they thought was going to happen. But what I can tell you is look at Mercury. By the time we close the polls that night, Mercury's no longer retrograde. Mercury goes direct on the day of the election. Now, the last time that Mercury was stationing on election day was 2000. And so many of you remember the hanging Chad story. Well, except that Mercury's going retrograde, and it took 3 weeks that Mercury was retrograde for everything to get straightened out. And when Mercury went direct, they finally decided what they were going to do. But that whole 3 weeks of Mercury retrograde, because Mercury is contracts and paper and decisions, and it's what it rules. It rules communication and voting. Or voting is a Mercury event because it's a conscious decision. So, of course, I always encourage everybody to vote regardless who you're voting for. If it's a write-in candidate, I don't care. At least you have the right to vote, and I encourage you to do it. If we don't stand up, people, who's going to? If we can't find something positive in all this, who's going to? If we're the ones who are actually conscious that there's higher energy and that thought is real and prayer is real, if we aren't going to take a stand and be positive, who's going to? So at least go vote. So Mercury will be direct that night. Now, in 2000, Mercury was going retrograde. So we had all that lag of time, that 3 weeks. This time Mercury's going direct. But nonetheless, right, that day, so we're going to have a confusion in communication. So I don't, are they going to have to wait to vote, count the absentee votes? I don't know. But it's going to be screwed up. That's what I can tell you. So we're going to have some delay in how because Mercury's in its shadow for about 10, 12 days after it goes direct until it gets back to the degree. Surprise, surprise, says Catherine. Well, but when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, this is interesting. So this is going to be. So you won't be shocked when there's all this delay. At least, though, you will say, I did my part and I did what was important to me. And I stood for what I thought was important. And because in the end, people, when we leave this planet, the only one we have to answer for is ourselves. And we do have to do that. We have to answer for our decisions and our ways of being and our ways of doing. So this will be a unstable and confusing time. Interesting, I'll show you from the US's chart. Now, this is July 4th, 1776. It is the natal chart of the United States. And we're using 5, 10, 12 states. Every different groups of astrologers have different times a day. They're all using July 4th, 1776. Some are using like 2 in the morning. Some are using 2 in the afternoon. The one at 5:10, it seems to be at the moment the most popular, because in 9/11, they said that they could rectify off this chart. So I don't even go there. That's really not my thing. I'm much more worried about you people than I am about the chart of the US, quite frankly. But this is the United States chart. We are a Cancer country, so you know. Cancer country loves home, family, land, and we're emotional people. And we're very patriotic people, much more so than people, I think, realize. But Cancer is very sensitive. We do have a moon in Aquarius. So I do believe that our purpose as a country was to break ground for a new way of being where each individual has individual rights. And so I think that's the Aquarian message. And we're getting ready to move into the age of Aquarius. I believe that our country will lead in freedom and independence. If we can keep from blowing apart, we can keep from destroying ourselves in the process. But I think we're going to make it because we have the chart for it. Here is the election, and this is the closing of the election on November 3rd, 7 p.m. Hawaii. So that's the one that I put around the US chart, just so you could look at it. And so what do we have? I will tell you that in 2022, Pluto takes 247, 48 years to go around. And in 2 years, Pluto's going to come back to Pluto in the US chart. Now, there's major transformation of values, money, resources. It's going to be a total reevaluation at that point in time. Pluto is power. Saturn will be sitting on Pluto. And this is the whole election is about power struggle. So, and no kidding, I mean, that's what presidents things are about. But there sits Saturn on Pluto, and it's not easy. So let me pull this up a little bit. Transiting Mars. Now, here's one more. So Mindy's going to type. Mars is, during this time, it started in July. Mars is the planet that rules Aries, and Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. And so back in July, Mars has a 2-year orbit. So if you take 12 signs into 24 months, save all the candidates. No, I'm going to save that for a later date. I don't want to go into the candidates tonight. I'm not ready for that. However, I will tell you that Mars in July entered Aries, its own sign, and normally it would be there 2 months. Move on to Taurus. Goes Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, and around the zodiac. They're always in the same order. Mars usually would be in Aries 2 months every 2 years and move on. So Mars came in July, and it's going retrograde. It's already has gone retrograde. Excuse me, it just did. And it's going to go back to 15 in November and go direct right after the election. Right after the election. And it will be January before it leaves Aries and goes into Taurus. That is 7 months, people. There you go, 7 months. That Mars will be. Now, I want you to look around. Mars is the warrior. Go back to Greek mythology. Any of you've studied Greek mythology. It's the warrior. It's fire. He's an action energy. He's charging. He's challenging. He's anger. So when Mars is really flailing, he's anger and fury and fire. He's also independence, and he's also pioneering. Mars, 7 months is going to be in its own sign. And what do we got? We have some of the worst fires we've had on the planet in I don't know how long. We have all these protests and fighting and people killing each other and burning down businesses. And you're like, I mean, is that a protest or is it, violence? What I can tell you is it's Mars. We're looking at Mars. And so Mars will just be ready to go. It's been retrograde. So it's been, when things go retrograde, what's been undercover comes up. And so retrograde means to repeat or reveal. And so Mars in review has gone back and is bringing up what was been underneath and for us to deal with. And there's an awful lot of anger and angst. And so I'm like, whoa. So Mars is getting ready to go direct. It'll be a few days after the election. I could show you exactly. Here's October. Mars is still retrograde. This is called an ephemeris for those of you that aren't familiar. I think everybody here is at least familiar with what's going on. This is the planet Mars, and it's been retrograde, and it's on the 14th that Mars will go direct. Here's when Mercury's going direct on November 3rd. That's the election. This is the 14th of November. So we've got a couple of weeks after. When Mars stations, sometime between, right after the election, from the 7th to the 20th, Mars will be I meant. So when I'm talking to you about Mars, Mars being the warrior, when Mars goes into station, we should expect some resistance to, I can't read that, so we'll have to go back to what I can read. They don't know what the chart says. I know, but you might as well know that that's Mars and it's retrograde. So what I'm telling you is that over those 14 days right after the election, we have a lot of Mars. I expect there to be protests, rioting, resistance, Mars activity. Now, who's doing it? I don't know. But we will be observing. The point of this is to sit back and say, we are observing the universe. We are watching the world. And let us put your oars in the boat and let the boat float, Let's just ride this. Let's be with the current. Let's not fight the current. let's stay with the power of prayer. Let's stay with positive thought. Let us see when Jupiter, Saturn come together in December, a whole new, sunrise and a new Aquarian personal freedom and personal independence. Let's embrace that. So, but November is not going to be the sweetest, kindest month you ever saw because Mars is stationed and Mars is, a little bit ornery. So that's election day. And, I know you don't understand the rest of it, but back to today. So where are we? We're in Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn. And once Jupiter hits Saturn and they hit zero Aquarius and Jupiter moves on, Jupiter is the planet of expansion and opening and brightening. And so I'm just telling you, when we get to December and January, things are going to start to open. So let us embrace the fact that right now, remember our full moon on Halloween, there is a culminating of a big time. There's a culminating, just like at the end of World War II. It had been such a big deal, and all of a sudden they called a truce, they called peace, and it was over. Everybody's like, whoa. It was such a big deal. So let's embrace this and let Uranus do its job and break loose and have some new things, new day. Who has any questions or comments or would like to share on any of these? Live it up. Diane Shepherd. Hello, hello. Okay, we got a couple of people typing, so good. Me too, Diane. The reason I share that story, there are a lot of people that have been very loving. What would you say to someone experiencing the Mars retrograde strongly? You're welcome, Catherine. Melissa says, what would you say? Somebody that's experiencing this Mars, I'm telling you that hidden anger, frustration, aggression may be coming up. And so allow it to come up, address it, call it what it is and say, wow, look at this. I didn't know this was even here. And then once something becomes conscious, we have choice. You see, when it's unconscious, it's instinctive. But when it's conscious, we have choice as to how we're going to respond. And that's where all of this knowledge and reading, every single one of you, there's nobody on here that hasn't read a ton of self-help or spiritual books along the way or listened to CDs or whatever. Okay, so Mary Ann says, I'm making sense. Well, I hope so, because it's part of what's going on. It's the only thing we have control over is how we respond to it. Bruce says, are you thinking the election results will be contested regardless of the apparent outcome on November 3rd? I don't think they're going to have an outcome on November 3rd. I think it's going to get delayed. And there's going to be confusion about what they're going to do or who won. And so I am expecting it to take a few days for it to unravel. So instead of getting all aggravated, for us, we don't want to be part of the problem. We want to be part of the solution. So we want to sit and stay calm and think calming thoughts and think, may the universe take charge here. So the call to, Mindy, the call to action. The call to action is, let's see, what about the moon on election day? Is that the people? Yes, Barb, it is. If we go to the election day and we go to the beginning of the day, but the whole day, the moon will be in Gemini. and that's the people. And so there's going to be a lot of talking. There always is, but I mean, it's going to be particularly verbal because the moon's in Gemini, and Gemini rules that. Bruce, to answer your question, I think it's going to be a while before they unravel it. I don't about who won. So all our responsibility is to observe, try to stay calm, and say to people, let us continue to pray for the highest and best outcome. Mars retrograde will be slowing down after the election and then stationing. That's right. Its energy that's what I said, right around the election and the 2 weeks after, Duffy, when Mars stations or is getting ready to shift it's like you bringing your lawnmower to neutral, okay? You've got all that power and you go into stall, and so all that energy is just flying. So Mars will be pretty big. And Melissa, you're right. People that have the Mars is on them, the anger, the frustration, the irritation, the maybe short-temperedness. If you're aware of that, then you're trying to modify it. You're trying to, because like I said, once it's conscious, we have choice. So I don't know that, I don't want to be directed by unconscious urges. I'd like to be able to think about it. So Angela says, not sure your thoughts on degrees and Pleiadian symbols, but Aquarius 1 equals in the desert, a way station to comfort travelers. That's the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. To comfort the travelers. So yes, Angela, I do, and there are a lot of degree meanings, people that have written. So there's more than one. We have come so far, and I do think that when Jupiter, Saturn in December come into Aquarius, there's going to be a calming. It's going to be a new sunrise, if you would. Debbie says, I'm thinking of election results being delayed. At the same time, think we will know when it goes direct. Yeah, well, it goes direct. What did I tell you on the 14th, 15th? But it's the reaction that people are going to have that I want you to observe. Watch Mars in its rawest form, and you're like, whoa. So, like I said, don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution. Don't jump into the anger and the aggression and the fighting and the hot, and don't run hot. Think, whoa, I got a choice here. What is the call to action? I'm asking you guys to step into your consciousness, recognize your own responses, recognize that at an unconscious level, we may just be reacting. But if we have choices and we choose consciousness, we can be helpful. And then we get back to the power of prayer and the power of positive thinking. And, they've been writing about it for a really long time, but it really does work. Cindy says, step into your consciousness and make choices to manage the energy instead of just reacting. That is absolutely right. I would like you to make conscious choices to stay calm, non-judgmental, stay out of fear, stay out of anger. Don't let Mars, the rawness of Mars, it's okay to recognize that you're angry and irritated. It's another thing to, light fires, whether they be verbal or so several people are typing. Mary Ann, deep breathing. I stay calm, stay positive, try to be the best you can be. I'm just telling you, you have no idea. And everything that I read, and when I pray, when I meditate, the message is you have no idea how powerful we are, how powerful our hearts and our minds are when we align with them. I mean, I've in the last month, I've had 3 different doctors tell me that what's happened to me in the last month is a miracle. They've never seen it. Now, how well it holds, whether I can stay centered and behave myself is another thing. But I was shown what the power of prayer and the power of positive thinking is. And so Catherine says, yeah, shine our inner light. When you're going to feel it. You're not anybody, and Melissa, you're right. People that have a lot of Aries energy are going to feel this Mars fire and agitation. I mean, you're going to feel it. Recognize it, honor it, journal it, pray about it. I don't care. Beat a pillow if you need to, but try. Be the person that you can be and be big enough to manage it as opposed to it managing you. I just asked, please don't let fear, don't let Saturn ground us and limit us to where we can't even function because of the fear. And fear is, I mean, I could talk about Neptune being fear, and there's Neptune squaring the nodes. And so is it fear or is it faith? And many years ago, I read that if you take a coin, when one side's fear, the other side is faith. When you have fear, you don't have faith. And when you have faith, you can't have fear. So think about that. Let us see what we feed our consciousness. So, I will do one more of these around the time of the election. And so let's go with streaming thought, streaming consciousness on a positive level. Doing the best we can each day, but don't feed the fire, okay? That's if we have any call to action is please don't feed the fire. Miss Nadia, she's outside of Washington. Go ahead, Nan. Hey, Nora and Eve. Good to see you. That's her daughters. And actually, I have to tell you, Nora and Eve, one of the reasons I did this tonight was because your mother asked if I was going to do another one because that you'd been listening. And if I can impact the young people, Millie, I'll tell you, that's a good thing. I don't know that some of us are, Good. Okay, so we're going to say goodnight. It's 5 after 8. We will post this. We will do, we'll do something on the election if we can keep it positive. So we don't, so we don't get into the underbelly of power. Okay, so thanks for all your prayers, and may we all be smiling at the end of this year, because I feel like we're starting to even out here. Okay.